Yo, what's good, YouTube? Welcome back to another chill Marvel Snap video. And I just wanted to get this video out to you guys because the season is coming to an end tonight, and I wanted to give you guys a little look at where my season ended and what decks I plan on using to get to Infinite this upcoming season. Thought I'd share them with you because if you were interested in using them yourself, you may do so. But yeah, so that's basically what this video is going to be. Just a little recap. I finished at 112, just casually playing, so decent climb. And the decks that I'm going to use to climb to Infinite this upcoming season, these are about the top 3, maybe top 4 decks that I will use to climb to Infinite this season. The first deck, I gotta share this with you. I'm kind of giddy actually about like how awesome this Thanos ongoing deck is. So even with the introduction of Enchantress being buffed to a 4/6, this deck, I was finding lots of success with it. I feel like Thanos just feels like it has so many counters in the game, right? You have Enchantress now, you have Darkhawk, which is like just a straight counter to Thanos, it feels like. You have Killmonger, right? Like there's just so many like natural counters to Thanos that are played like pretty heavily in the meta that I always feel discouraged to play Thanos. But then whenever I play it, it just feels badass, dude. Like it just feels so strong and solid. Like there's just some cool things that this deck does that I think it will always do cool. I just had the funnest time. I was just kind of excited about playing Marvel Snap every time I logged in to play Thanos this season. I was really surprised how well it did for me. And you kind of just gotta shrug those ones that you lose with like an Enchantress or Killmonger. You kind of just shrug and walk it off, you know, because you've been having so much fun in the other matchups. And so, what is this deck essentially trying to do? You notice here it has this used to run Valkyrie, but I cut Valkyrie for Iron Man primarily because I had a buddy of mine who just got Thanos and they wanted to try out a Thanos build, and so I recommended Thanos ongoing and they didn't have Valkyrie, and I said, well, just replace Valkyrie with Iron Man. And we ended up doing like a stream the other day playing with this build, and we were just kicking butt, and I was like, dude, Iron Man is so good. I almost felt it was better than Valkyrie, especially since so much ongoing is happening, like with Darkhawk. The Valkyrie is not quite as strong without Shuri in the meta. So switching out just for straight Iron Man has been like absolutely incredible. You can notice here we have 4 5-drops. So like one of the basic things this deck is trying to do that is just so broke, to be honest, is just using Time Stone. Time Stone is like one of the sickest cards. Like playing Time Stone on turn 3 is super clutch because it lets you cheat out a 5-drop on turn 4 and then a second 5-drop on turn 5, and then you can drop your, you know, Spectrum on turn 6, or you can do another 5-drop and a 1-drop on turn 6, and it's just really strong. So this is probably one of my favorite things to do in this deck, is just really abuse Time Stone. Time Stone and Reality Stone are 2 cards that I definitely abuse a lot in this deck. They give you so much flexibility. Space Stone gives you some flexibility, but it's not always useful. But, you know, also you're just using these stones to draw cards. Just draw out your deck. Power Stone is just really great too because it's an ongoing that gets buffed by Spectrum. So it just ends up being a pretty strong 1-drop, you know, that you're dropping into a lane to either boost your, you know, Ant-Man. And finish off a lane that your opponent thought they might be able to win, and you just drop Power Stone and Ant-Man, and you're dropping like 5, 8, 10 power for like 1 mana, right, on that lane if you're Spectruming, right? Like maybe you you know, Time Stoned, you know, turn 5, and you're able to drop, you know, Power Stone and Spectrum turn 6, and you're just like, you know, all that power comes out of nowhere, right? So, and then Professor X is a great card to cheat out on turn 4 as well. So using Time Stone Time Stone to cheat out primarily a Professor X, any one of these 5-drops. Maybe not Devil Source so much, but Professor X, Blue Marvel, or Iron Man are like really great cards to cheat out on turn 4. So this deck just runs really well. I can't tell you how many games I won because of Cosmo. I mean, this deck largely has priority turn 1 because you're dropping 1-drops pretty frequently. And being able to just clearly guess what your opponent's trying to do when they drop their cards. Like, whether it be like a Yandi, so you know Galactus is coming, or like a Destroy deck, so you know Deathlock is coming, you just like drop Cosmo, or a discard deck, they play, let's say, Morbius turn 2, then you can kind of guess that turn 3 they're going to drop maybe like Lady Sif or something, you just Cosmo it. Like, I mean, you just really screw up a lot of people's strategies, and this lets you avoid Enchantress in that lane as well, and he's ongoing. So, I mean, like, Cosmo is just great in here. So, I mean, this deck is just really strong. I've had so much fun with it. Being able to run Goose and Cosmo really, you know, it really hurts your opponent's ability to play out their deck. So I can't say enough about this. I had a ton of fun playing this. I don't know why. I'm always reluctant to play Thanos, but whenever I do, I just have such a great time with it, and I get excited to play Marvel Snap, you know. So Thanos Ongoing will definitely be a deck that I used to climb Infinite this season. You could probably just stick with this deck the whole way through. Like, if you just hit Series 3, I recommend just playing this. Just get Thanos with 6k credits. Like, the very first card you should get is Thanos. And then just play this. A lot of these cards are like Series 1, Series 2, a couple Series 3. There's nothing really crazy hard to get here, maybe Goose. But otherwise, this is like a really easy card to acquire, a deck to acquire other than Thanos. And you're going to do really well with it. You're going to have a few matches that you just lose to, but you got a lot of power going on here. You do a lot of cool stuff, so I highly recommend Thanos Ongoing. The next deck that I'll probably be using a lot of, believe it or not, is MODOK. I actually made a deck video for MODOK, but I haven't uploaded it yet, but I'm going to upload that soon, talking about why this deck just seems to fall off of people's tier lists. I don't understand why no one's playing MODOK, but the build I have here was just really strong. It was one of the first decks that I started trying in Infinite once I hit Infinite, just to see how, you know, once I hit Infinite, I like to really explore a lot of different decks, you know, try more decks out and see what's strong. This is one of the first ones I tried that I actually started climbing pretty well with. Immediately started earning cubes, got a couple ranks like right off the bat with it. And I played a couple different versions of this. This is called All-In MODOK, which is basically just playing to draw MODOK on 5, and if you don't, you're probably not going to win, but you're going to draw MODOK on 5 probably like 70+% of the time. So you almost always draw MODOK, and so like you're just playing towards that end goal. And I'll discuss that more in a second here, but I also played a little bit of Discard Stature, and this is pretty good too, but what I was learning was basically all I'm trying to do is the exact same thing. I'm trying to drop Morbius, I'm trying to drop Dracula, and I'm trying to play MODOK on turn 5 with Apocalypse. That's really all I'm trying to do, even with this deck. So I was like, you know what, I should just try to maybe go more, you know, lean in more to that strategy. It's nice to kind of have the Stature as like a backup play. If you don't drop MODOK, you can kind of go Black Bolt, Stature, or if you played Moon Knight earlier, you can go into Stature turn 4, which isn't bad either. But it was just, it doesn't hit a lot, and you often it ends up just being MODOK fodder for Morbius. And so I was like, you know, what if I just leaned in more? And so they have about very similar win rates. So if you have Stature, feel free to play this version if you want. But I think if you don't have Stature and you just have MODOK, you just go with this cheaper version that really the only hard card in here to get is MODOK. You know, you have Calling Wing, which is, you know, Series 3, a couple Series 3, Mystique, but there's no Series 4 or 5 cards in here other than MODOK. And so I just recommend this deck. It's a great point slam, especially since like Shuri doesn't exist anymore in the meta, which I don't understand why, but Shuri just doesn't seem to exist anymore in the meta. So I highly recommend this deck here, Why Agent 13. I go into more detail on the video that I made of Why Agent 13, but essentially other one-drops, like let's say if I wanted to play like Iceman, it's a card that I lose power on Morbius for, right? I don't like that I lose. So yeah, I get the 2 power from Iceman and you disrupt their hand, but then you lose 1 additional card to boost Morbius. So I was like, is there a way that I can still have the 2 power from the 1-drop while also retaining the 2 power on Morbius for MODOK discard? And so that's basically why Agent 13's in here. I play her, I don't disrupt her hand, but I keep additional power on Morbius this way, and it's kind of like just a free 2 power. And you know, occasionally she adds a card to your hand that synergizes with your deck. I've had double Wolverines, you know, she kind of adds some cards that sometimes can be useful, but she's primarily in there just to float 2 power if you have 1 mana to spend, 1 energy to spend. Sorry, I keep saying mana because I'm used to Hearthstone language. But if you have 1 energy to spend, you can float 2 power without losing any power from your MODOK combo. So that's why I like Agent 13. I'm primarily just playing Morbius into Dracula. I only play Calling Wing if I have a Swarm or Wolverine in my hand. Otherwise, I just let it get discarded for a MODOK. Because, you know, if Calling Wing is discarding something like Sunspot, then you're going to do that anyways with MODOK, right? And so losing her from your hand and losing another card from your hand that's not Swarm or Wolverine, you're only gaining her 4 power. And you lose the 2 cards from your hand, those 2 cards coming from your hand are going to add 4 power to Mobius anyways. So there isn't any reason to play Calling Wing unless you have a Wolverine Swarm in hand. Otherwise, there is no reason to play her out. You remember, you're just playing into MODOK only. Same rule with Lady Sif. You do not play her out unless you have Apocalypse. And I built the deck so that your Apocalypse will always be the biggest card. When he's in your hand, he will always be the biggest card in your hand. Unless you run into like Elysium or something that's giving you -1 cost off your cards, and it can get tricky. But primarily, Apocalypse will always be the biggest card in your hand. And so Lady Sif will only ever get played if she can discard Apocalypse. So that happens fairly frequently. Quite frequently. And then MODOK, of course, is always being played turn 5. You need MODOK to dump your hand so Dracula can get big off Apocalypse. So you basically just play MODOK. Turn 6, you play Chavez. And if you have Swarms, you play those out. And then you let Dracula discard. Apocalypse, usually a 20 power Dracula. Pretty frequently is a 20 power Dracula. Because Apocalypse will discard for like 16 and he'll add 4 to that, making Dracula 20 power. So this deck wins a lot of games for some reason. I don't think a lot of people see it enough to really know if they can beat it or not. And that's one advantage of this deck too, is people stay into the end quite frequently. And you're going to most likely beat a lot of decks. And they don't realize how much power you can drop turn 6. So yeah, people stay in. So it gives you a lot of free wins. I think this is a great deck, and I don't know why more people don't play this. And like I said, I have no discard, casino. There's no casino discard here. I'm specifically playing discard cards when they specifically target specific cards in my deck. There's no casino action here. I'm only playing Morbius, and then I'll play Mystique onto Morbius. She's the only reason why Mystique is in here is to copy Morbius. So that's the second deck I'm definitely going to be playing. If you want to see me playing this deck, I'll be playing it tomorrow morning on the We Love Gaming podcast channel. Check it out. If you want to tune in, I will put a link in the description. And another deck that I'll probably for sure be playing is something like this Pure Sauron deck. You may not have Sauron, but if you do, then you can look at something like this. A lot of people right now are playing that Jeff the Baby Shark with Miles Morales and Stature, which is a pretty strong deck. But this is doing something similar because this is kind of like your Stature, right? Like he's like the same exact thing. So you're Sauroning and you're making this a 1/7, on any turn. This is kind of like your Miles Morales, very similar concept going on here. You have a strong turn 6 play. Zabu is really great. That's why Maximus is in here, because he becomes a 3-cost. So your turn 6 can be like Enchantress Maximus, which is really strong, or like Enchantress into Typhoid. So you can get rid of the ongoing ability. So Enchantress is like super clutch. Not only does she synergize incredibly well with your deck, but she also disrupts your opponent's deck. So I won quite a bit of games just playing Enchantress out. So that this deck can run Enchantress so easily gives it a great edge. The only thing it negatively synergizes with is basically Zabu and Armor. But you don't care about Zabu because you're probably not playing Enchantress out till the last turn and the game is over, so Zabu could no longer give you your discount anyways. And Enchantress and Armor can be tricky, especially when you play Attuma into Armor. Like that's one of the main reasons why you have Attuma in here. But you can also Zera Attuma. But if you destroy the Armor with Enchantress, and Attuma is going to destroy, so be careful for that synergy. But this is dropping a lot of power on the last turn, just as much as like that Jeff, Stature deck. It's really similar. I don't see anyone running this deck, and I really love it, especially because it's kind of immune to Enchantress. It's a little weak to Killmonger, unfortunately. It's a little weak to Killmonger. I just discarded Titania on accident. It's a little weak to Killmonger because some of these cards are really important, like your Ebony Maw and Titania are pretty important to winning the game. So if you get Killmonger, it can really hurt, unfortunately. But Lizard's still great in here. I've Enchantress Lizard so many times, or you just Sauron it. So this deck is really strong as well. So I highly recommend this deck if you have Sauron. I think you're going to win a lot of games with this deck. And then just as a shout out is my Shuri Storm deck. This is kind of like an honorable mention. I've already talked about this deck, which is why I haven't included it on this video as far as my top 3 decks I'm going to play this season. But I always definitely recommend this. This is a super strong deck. If you want to check that video out, you can see it on my channel. It's called the Shuri Storm, and I highly recommend trying this deck out as well. You'll win lots of games with this one also. Storm kind of acts as your pseudo Cosmo, and you just slide in either Doom or Marvel Snap into the Shuri lane, and it's like a Cosmo because they can't play Shang-Chi into the Storm lane to kill your Vision. So that's kind of the idea here. And Rocket Raccoon is a great turn 4 play after you stormed. So you storm turn 3 and then Rocket Raccoon and like Juggernaut turn 4. And Rocket Raccoon will buff because the opponent's going to be highly incentivized to play into the storm lane. And so you can easily take advantage of that by playing Rocket Raccoon in there to become a 1/4 and then Juggernaut. And there's probably no way that you lose that lane. So these are the primary decks I'm going to be playing to an infinite this season. Let me know if there's anything you want me to play or any suggestions, and I will check them out. If you like these decks, let me know. Comment below. If you like this video, go ahead and leave a like. I'd really appreciate that, and thank you all for the support, and I will talk to you later. Peace.